Welcome to another edition of Dogrunner and Branding Random. Today, as I'm taking some sunlight and walk Daisy, said, why don't I sit and try to review things that I can remember about some of the books I've read. Actually, listen to an audiobooks, subscribe to Hoopla and Amazon Prime Audio, as well as Overdrive using Navy Library, as well as Virginia Beach Library. So I have access to all of this, and these are all free. And you can too if you have those library cards. Anyway, I'm gonna talk to you about this allergy. It's not the COVID, so don't worry about it. About 12 Rules for Life. It is a book written by Jordan Peterson. If you haven't heard of him, he is one of the toughest conservative, and the liberal students hates him, mock him, and he is totally conservative but very tough. And it's a story-based book that lays out people based on facts, true to life. You have a lot of stories. I'm just gonna talk about maybe 3 that I can remember. And by the way, this book has sold over 1 million copies or sold on Amazon. And 12 Rules for Life isn't just a book. It is ideas that refine a blueprint for you to, just flip through and get some guide. Although, let me warn you, the Bible is still the best guidebook, self-help book. This is just something opinion or based on research. There's tons of really good self-help books, career books, but the Bible has the power to push you in doing it. So if you just read this, it's not going to change your life unless somebody else push you, or you push yourself with a coach or consultant or a counselor like me. Like I need someone like my wife to push me to practice what I preach. And that's there's one part of that book in the book that talks about that. So sorry about the allergy. So one of the first premise of the book is practice what you preach, which is sweep in front of your own door before pointing, that the street is dirty. Don't complain if you're not doing it. And you see that a lot on social media. They complain about the president when they're not leading anybody. So the second premise is treat yourself like a child. Like treating a child you're responsible for. So if you treat your son well, you should treat yourself well as well. So you're responsible for yourself. Sorry, let me move because the sunlight is moving. The third thing I remember premise is try to have a goal and aim for something that's meaningful, not convenient. So a lot of people just aim for something that they can accomplish easily because of their comfort zone is there. So they're limiting themselves. Those are the message of the book. So and so maybe let's expand those 3 premises that I talked about. So the first thing is don't judge the world when you don't take responsibility about the world. If you want somebody else to fix it, fix some of them. Life isn't fair. We're all a team. We're all in this COVID crisis or depression. Unemployment has raised, but then people just complain about the president or the authorities. They keep yelling, go to work. Sorry, Blinky, come here. So, come here, Blinky, stay here. And some of us, sooner or later, in some small ways, some like this crisis, some of us, most of us have eventually realized that we have to work together. Some of you are kind of slow. They still complain, post complain to the president when he's doing his best. Leo Tolstoy, he quoted, I used to read a lot of philosophy, and Leo Tolstoy is more of a like a fiction writer, but he's Russian. And you have to give credits to some Russians because they have this, you know, wisdom. In his book Confession, he concluded that there are only four reasonable responses for for this crisis. Absurdity of life, like ignorance, like it's like a child. Teenagers, they don't want to accept reality. The second one is pleasure. We get addicted to Facebook, social media, and I can't blame anybody because I do the same thing. So back in the Sodom and Gomorrah days, that's why you have to be involved in the Word of God, so you get to really refocus yourself. He talked about suicide also, and holding on to something despite everything. And suicide, he talked about Leo Tolstoy himself, whose last option was struggling on, and which tells you a lot about this book and his belief about good life, no matter how unfair life gets. They voted for somebody who was not popular or something like that. No matter how unfair life gets, you should never blame the world in this crisis. Although I'm kind of blaming China because it started there, this virus. You can't blame everybody. Like, a lot of people blaming President Trump. There's always someone who's suffered worse than you. People that die or having this virus and having this COVID eventually actually get healed. 99% actually survive in this. So you look at the bright side. One of the other book that he quoted was Viktor Frankl. He was, I believe, a survivor from the Nazi. He was a prisoner, and he talked about the bleak and the suffering, but during the Nazi regime when he was in prison. But he took responsibility, and so to speak, he kept his house clean and do his what he needs to do. Take responsibility and everything. The second thing that was talked about was taking care. Sorry, Daisy's right there, hiding from the sun. So taking care of yourself. If you like, you would love for a loved one. Like, take care of yourself like how you take care of your loved one. So some people give us medication and you say, I don't need that. But if it's prescribed to your loved one, you said, no, you should do that because you care for them. So don't dwell on self-punishment or self-pity. Some people that take care of themselves take care of others better. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody. So your inability to deal with the insanity in this life, like what's going on, he quoted a lot of the Bible verse. He believes that the Bible is scientific, historical, Jordan Peterson, and he quoted Adam and Eve when they had to taste the forbidden fruit of knowledge. God said, don't take that. But we take them because we are so indulged in the dark side. I am too. I'm tempted all the time. And I do some of them. And it ends up not so well. So, and when we do that, sometimes we feel we deserve punishment. And the unfairness to life, which shouldn't be. That's why we have Jesus who forgives our sin. And so we can move on. He talked about, not just Christianity, but also Eastern religion, like the yin and yang. We all carry both the light and darkness of life. One can't exist without the other. That means instead of just striving for one, we should seek balance. And like if you care for one, do the best for you, even though it might not always be make you happy. There's no perfection. I think I've talked to you enough about that. There's so many a premise, 12, so I'm only talking about 3 of them. So the third one is you should always seek meaning from this crisis or sacrifice, and don't always seek comfort, happiness through enjoyment or pleasure. You can always find happiness in crisis, in sacrifice. So balancing your light and dark side can take many different forms. Sometimes it may be staying in bed late, stay healthy. Other times you might be staying late for work, and then you tend to sacrifice your family time rather than temporary happiness by choosing pleasure. So Peterson says this is not helping balance your life if you are drawn towards hedonism or narcissism, which I find it funny because they were calling our presidents narcissists and being so self-righteous, which many people I know, I myself, is being self-righteous. Sometimes you work overtime to pay for a vacation, you sacrifice your time, and why don't you just enjoy every minute of your life, even though it might not feel like it when you do it? Sacrifice is never really about giving up rewards. It's about referring to get something even better, or something that you can train this through willpower training. So this book has a lot of advice, and as I've said again, this advice is not going to work unless somebody else push you to do it. You can read, there's 2,000 books on self-help every year, and imagine that. But people doesn't change just by knowing this. You need somebody to help you push this, like a coach, a consultant, or a counselor like me. So what else do I remember about this book? So 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. He's a good book. If you don't want to read, just search on his thing, Jordan Peterson. So Jordan Peterson talks a little bit about his childhood, how he, the job of his parents. So he grew up in a lot of sacrifice, and he talked a lot about the human spirit and how he became strong, and how you can practice active listening, things that I really have a hard time on. And some people who, like feeling depressed and don't know what to do in life. So he talked a little bit about how to live and become rich. So there's a lot of things in this summary. So until next time, Vicky, come here. Again, I couldn't have a lot of this time reviewing this book without Emboss Creation, who pays for the bill. And so I have time to do this for you, to summarize a book. Try to limit it to 10 minutes. I hope I didn't go over. And I think I went over 15 minutes based on my video. So anyway, Emboss Creation, bring your brand to life. And go to emboss.net, and for consulting, coaching, counseling, and creative advice, marketing, consulting, consultation, get an appointment schedule at commercewise.us. Until next time, have a great run. Minky, come here.